Hello and welcome, beautiful souls. I am Marta, also known as Marta the Medium, and I'm so honored to be your host for How to Be a Psychic Medium, a virtual retreat for spiritual seekers. This sacred gathering is brought to you by my Psychic Mediumship Academy, where I support spiritual seekers and emerging psychic mediums in unlocking their intuitive gifts, deepening their connection with spirit, and stepping fully into their soul's calling. And for those already on this path, this space is an invitation to deepen, expand, and reconnect with your unique way of working with the spirit world. Today, I am so excited to welcome someone whose work I truly admire and whose presence I know will resonate deeply with many of you, the incredible Lara Wells. She is a national award-winning medium and spiritual female. She began her spiritual journey early, and from the age of 4, she remembers various situations and things that she would pick up on that was different to others. Her professional journey began quite by chance, and before she knew it, she had grown a large and very prolific clientele, with clients flying in from all corners of the world just to see her and get insight into their destiny and communicating with loved ones and facilitate the journey of grief and healing. Today, Lara teaches and creates bespoke programs of spiritual development and healing and travels the world holding masterminds and retreats. Lara, welcome. I am so happy you are here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you. So we'll see where the conversation take us. We never know. We might have certain ideas, but let's leave it to the spirit world. Okay. Well, I want to say let's begin at the beginning, but I'm not sure whether there is a beginning. But you've been doing this work for many years and your journey started really young. Do you remember when you first realized this was your path, not just something you experienced, but something you were meant to share? I'm curious about that.
My mum, if you asked my mum that, she'd say that I was born with I came out with tarot cards in my hand, right? Well, like, red-haired. My dad was not expecting it. He's dark-haired, mum's blonde-haired, and he nearly passed out in the delivery room because back then, he's not got the stomach for it anyway. But when somebody said, "Oh, and it's got red hair," he came over quite like dizzy in that, and he had to be, led out of the delivery room. I always remember picking stuff up, like seriously, I could feel what was going to happen before it did. My mum's friends probably were the ones that kind of knew there was something different. And then they started coming around to see my mum. They weren't coming around to see her, they were coming around to see me, and and they just subtly, if my mum was making tea and coffee, for her friends, they'd be like, "Well, I just met this new guy, what do you think of him?" And back then you didn't have social media or anything like that, so I'd be like, no, don't get a good feeling about this one. Or there was one guy though that really, his name was Arthur, and my mum's friend who's passed, this is why I'm telling this story, obviously, because she probably wouldn't mind now, but this guy was, everybody loved him, Arthur, right? But he put my mum's kitchen in, her bathroom in. My mum had recently become a single parent and stuff, and my mum's friend, she was besotted with him, absolutely besotted. So but I did not take to this guy. I thought, I just didn't, his vibe didn't feel right, and so I was like, no. And mum's like, "Why don't you like him? Everybody loves Arthur, he's just so helpful, he's hardworking, he's this, he's that." I said, "I just don't think he's who he says he is." So fast forward, a couple of 3 or 4 years, and in my teens, I was doing, when all the people were like, trying to do underage drinking and go out into pubs and clubs and stuff, I was doing seances in crypts and scout huts, quite by accident. I just, like, the person who was meant to do the seances one night, right, didn't show up. So, they for some reason, they chose me to do it. And I was like, never a clue what I was doing. So I was like, well, how hard can it be? You know, that kind of thing. Just, I was actually quite shy, believe it or not, until I had my first child. But, you know, back then I was like, well, okay, you know, with a seance, you smash the glass afterwards. Went to you could, don't know if you remember, but collecting tokens, you know, from the petrol station, like at the Esso petrol station back then, you could then like exchange them for like glasses, you know, towels, that sort of thing, you know, like things for your home. Well, I'd gone through my mum's entire collection of glasses, right, you know, with this. So naturally, when she did have a friend round and went to get them a drink, all the glasses had gone because I'd actually used them for the seances. But there was amazing stuff that I would never be able to know. Like somebody, there was 2 members of our family there. Their uncle had just died, and I found out through the seance that their uncle was having an affair with one of my cousins, even though he was married and she was married. So I went back and I said, Mum, did you know that blah, blah, blah was having an affair with, and she kind of stopped because you know, she was one of the only ones that knew about this. There was no way I would have known. And so I think that was probably when she took notice. But this, moving past that to Arthur, 16, I left home, went to work with racehorses. And I came back because Mum's friend was getting married to this Arthur. So I'm sitting there, you know, in this place. They got married and it was the reception. And I'm thinking, you know, it's funny what you see, isn't it, when you disconnect and don't attach to what you're seeing. And I thought there were some people there. I really didn't get why they were there. Again, it was kind of, the vibe was similar to his, but it only turned out he had 3 ex-wives that he hadn't divorced. They all turned up at the wedding with their kids.
Wow.
And then he did a runner from a mum's friend as well. So basically, he was a bigamist. Right. And, you know, he was just on the run. So he got with a woman, created, you know, a lot of debt and stuff like that, and then took off, met somebody else, created another identity and stuff. And that was back in the day before, you know, internet and computers and stuff like that. I was only 16. And then, of course, fast forward again, single parent, came back home. And, you know, got my own place and stuff. And I started studying. And when I walked in, my grandmother was having a clear out of, you know, our spring cleaning, as she would call it. So my son was just a few months old at the time. And I was, there was a set of tarot cards at the bottom of the bed she was about to throw in the bin. So talk about divine timing. Right, and I have to pay attention to this. You know, when people say, oh, you're late or you're early, there is such a thing as divine timing. You're in perfect time to what the universe needs you to be, where, you know, you need to be. And so there was a series once, I'll move on to that, you know, soon, because I remember there was I can't remember it. There was a kind of positive one and a negative one, and they kind of always seemed to meet up, but the negative one was always killing people and stuff. And nothing ever happened to her. She ended up, you know, coming out of it with no damage, no scrapes, that sort of thing. And then inadvertently, with the good guy, the good person that was there to help people, you know, in a different way, they always ended up at a certain point together. You're positive and you're negative. You know, the universal laws, one can't exist without the other one, right? And so kind of that's what divine timing is like. If you're watching this right now, you know, divine timing is a timing that supersedes what we called a man-made time, right? Man-made time helps you see things, you know, in a physical, you know, sense of the way, but divine timing are really more to do with universal laws and stuff. So there were the cards, and I was like, does this look familiar? When Anne said, well, your mum's tried to use them and couldn't. I tried. She'd even typed up all the meanings and stuff at work, you know. And she says, so I very much doubt whether you'd be able to do this. Now, well, of course, I rose to the challenge, Marta, didn't I? I was like, got a bit like, give me the cards, right? I said, well, I'll just take them and have a look. So she said, well, okay then, but, you know, we couldn't. So I thought, well, that's a bit like, you're already done before you've started. You know what I mean? It's condemning, isn't it? This is why I like to think that it's always better to be positive about things than negative about things, because how does anybody feel about motivating themselves or trying something new or doing their shadow work, which we could talk about as well, to get to who they really, really are.
Mm-hmm.
Why we attract certain people into our energy or situations or whatever, because we don't do the shadow work. But anyway, I was studying at college, took them into college. Of course, the night before, I tried to read the book, Marta. Have you seen the size of those books, by the way? They're like, it's like the size of that, isn't it? It's like the writing's tiny. And and I thought, how can anybody read this? Never mind, like, remember it. And how would that relate to everybody? So I took my cards into college the next day. I said, I've got a set of cards. Nobody got to any classes that day, in the adult common. And I did 8 people. And it was a slaved, as I would call it. It took me ages. I was sweating, right? I didn't know whether, it was right or wrong. I just went by what my intuition that I learned, that's what it was at the time. And then within a couple of weeks, they all started coming back to me going, I can't believe what you said. My mother-in-law has now been diagnosed with cancer, like you've said. I'll keep you posted. But I told her that when this happened, she would be okay, no matter what they said, and that was right enough. There was another girl there that was pregnant. She wanted a boy, but because she already had a wee girl. She recently got married and was pregnant, and she ordered a bacon roll, I think it was, or something that morning. Anyway, in my mind, straight away, I thought she's having another girl. Right enough. Out popped another little girl a few weeks from then. She never had any more after that. That was enough for her. And so on and so forth. It was really quite, even I was like, now, okay, hang on. I can't, at the time I would say, I'm not clever enough to get that information myself. There must be more to this. And of course, they started telling people they knew that, and then they started telling other people. And before I knew it, I was getting parties booked. The newspapers had picked up on me, and put me in there. The Annandale chain, which had 4 or 5 newspapers, put me in there. I then, because I was 25, I'd actually came runner-up in the Live Wire award for Scotland. The only reason I didn't win it was because I didn't employ anybody. I applied for a grant from the Princess Trust to expand my then business at the time. They said yes, but then the royal family said no, and kicked me aside, basically, because they couldn't be associated with me with Prince Charles. It's a man that talks to the trees, by the way, right? And of course, he's now the king. And not just that, the national media got hold of it somehow. And the next thing, I was driving into Carlisle, and I was plastered all over the billboards with Princess Diana and Madonna. The big billboards, or the big, like, where they advertise. I was on the front page of The Sun, of the Daily Mirror, of the Daily Record, right? I was like mortified. And so, but what it did was, is the saying, no news is bad news, like no publicity is bad publicity. That in itself, let's just say I got plenty of practice, right? People coming to my house. And that was in the days we didn't have virtual or Zoom or StreamYard or, video calls. And yeah, so that was a lot of people. And I was lucky enough to then travel the world, etc., etc. So, of course, naturally, a lot of my training is done hands-on, actually with people. Right, limiting, even though it can be really good, to nourish the logic mind, is on any subject, only ever read 2 books maximum, right? Just to get a gauge, some pointers. And the rest, generating, you've got to know how to generate, your clientele, your business, that sort of thing, because you need that practical hands-on or intuition on, I suppose, experience, right? Because it's not a job you can just get up one day, is it, Marta, and go, I know, I got the memo, I had a dream, the angel came, and this is what I've got to do, and then you're there. You need good, honest guidance, advice, like a spiritual advisor and consultant and, mentor that's been there, done that, knows, certain things. Also knows as well that if, because we all do it differently and individually, who also can honor the process, honor spirit, honor the spiritual process, and respect the message and the information, and know that there is something bigger than us.
Beautiful. There's one thing that has just popped into my mind, and hopefully you could expand on that, because I know you're an amazing psychic medium and you do not need tarot cards in order to be able to connect with the spirit world. But, and this is something I would love for us to go deeper because it matters to me so much. So we still hear things like, it's from other mediums, but also from people who are not spiritual. We hear, I don't need cards, real mediums don't use tools. If you're truly gifted, you shouldn't need anything outside of yourself. And I just want to say that's not spirit talking. I truly believe that's ego. And for me, there's no hierarchy in terms of how we connect with spirit, whether it's tea leaf reading, crystal ball scrying, iridology, face reading, etc. These are not gimmicks. They are sacred, symbolic languages. They are ancient. So
Tools.
I was hoping you can just maybe expand a little bit more. How do you personally hold these traditional tools, and what would you say to people, especially other mediums, who still treat them like a lesser path?
Oh, well, how would you get a hairdresser if she didn't have her tools, her scissors, her comb, her colouring kit, or, there are tools. So to people like ourselves, we have tools. Now, the interesting thing, like you're saying, everything, you've got your I Ching coins, haven't you? You've got your Chinese sticks. You've got tarot cards, astrology cards, oracle cards, right? You've got crystal balls. You've got crystals. You've got reading water, reading flames. Like you're saying, there's lots of different methods of divination, as it's called. You've got boxes for doing physical mediumship in that look like kind of mini churches, really, but they serve a purpose of condensing energy. You've got spirit writing boxes, where they're designed so that they contain energy. There are purposes of things, of honouring the natural elemental and elements and flow of elemental energy. Like I said, there's universal laws. And that doesn't mean that we can read, if we read with these things, that we can't read without these things, because in my experience, and I've tried it many a time, if I don't have a set of cards when I'm predicting for somebody, they think I'm just sitting talking with them. So the client likes something to look at. Yeah. I mean, you've seen yourself, on, sometimes they ham it up on shows and things and whatever, but like say Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost, right? She sits there, throws her head back, eyeballs go all white, you know what I mean? And she hams it up so that other people can see that, the drama of it, right? And, for Patrick Swayze to then step into her or communicate through her or whatever. And I think going back over centuries, if you look at the history side of things, is that right the way through, you see evidence of they've got to be weird to do that. Another one is reading bones. That was a one that was used by, say, witches and stuff and diviners centuries ago. And bones, they would have their bones and they would throw them like I Ching coins, but they would be bones, and there would be blood of an animal and sacrifice and all the rest of it. So it's about, would they accept it as being something otherworldly unless you were using otherworldly tools, right? Because it's about the power of belief. It's about other, your clients and other people external to that. What does it take for their mind to then go, oh, that must be something different, right? It's a bit sad, really, because they'd rather believe that and all the paraphernalia because it must be different, instead of entertaining the idea that some of us actually are born different, and that's the gift in that area. instead of honouring that, they've squashed that. Does that make sense, Marta?
It does. I truly believe we should read and connect with the spirit world the way it comes to us naturally. And when we are drawn to a certain divination tool, I believe we should, this might be a sign, it is a sign from the spirit world that it's a modality that we are encouraged to explore and that might enhance the layers and the depth of our messages that we are delivering to our clients.
Yeah. You know, when I was growing up, I was just thinking, my mum, she'd always say, what would you like for your birthday? I'm not materialistic or anything at all. But one of the little games that I used to play with myself is this, and I would say this from a very early age, before I knew, I didn't know that taking myself out my body and standing watching myself sitting on the chair was something that people weren't generally aware of doing. Right. Mm-hmm. One day I decided to tell my dad, you know, I was about 6 years old, I think, 7 years old. And I said, I was never allowed to play out with all the other children late and I had to go to bed early. He came up to say goodnight to me and I went, Daddy, I can take myself out my body and jump from wall to wall and I can tell you who's playing outside and what they're wearing. Mm-hmm. He thought it was a game. He went to the window, opened the curtain, and then he says, "Well, go on then." And I reeled it all off, and then he's who it was and what they were wearing, and he just went really pale. My dad's an engineer, mechanical engineer, so he's very logical thinking, you know. He just walked out the room. It was never mentioned again. Do you know, to this day, he's never talked about what it is that I do, and he's 81. So one of the games I used to play with my mum is that I'd take myself out my body and go and have a look. So I'd astral project, right? Come out and go and have a look to see what she got me. And then I'd come back and then the next day I'd say, I really like the necklace that you've got me, Mum. She'd be like, what necklace? So she'd say, oh, for goodness sake, see you're so annoying to buy for. And she says, can you not just do that? She says, can you just not do that? And I'd be like, but I think it's funny. I'm going to carry on doing it. So I'm a nightmare. I'm a nightmare when it comes to see the things you've got to entertain yourself with.
I love
On a more serious note, I can use that skill set for other things as well, like finding people, finding dogs, you know, animals that have ran away, that sort of thing. And I can also go into the back of people's heads within 3 seconds and pull out something they don't want anybody else to know. If I'm really, if I'm angered and pushed, I don't like the feeling of that, so I choose to not. But there are times where if I'm feeling particularly frustrated or pushed by somebody, that it happens. And to the extent where I think they've actually told me, and they said, no, I never said that. I never told you that. Where did you get that from? And I'm there thinking, well, the only two, So it has its benefits, but it can also, you know, cause me trouble, like at a dinner party, you know, a tumbleweed moment, because I've mentioned that thing that you're not supposed to mention, that nobody's meant to know about from one person. There you go.
I love it. I use it sometimes as well, especially to those people who have just found out that I'm a psychic medium, and then I tell them that I can read their thoughts, and they get so scared. And then, of course, I'm not going to do it. I close those abilities, but every once in a while, when I'm being triggered, then I might, privately tell that person something, and then they realize that this is real. So, yeah. I just love it that you can sometimes.
Well, that's it. There's a lot of thing, like the word psychic, right? The word psychic tends to like turn most people off. They think it's a load of paraphernalia, like, you know, it's a load of gobbledygook and stuff like that. But the psychic. If you think of it more as that, you get psychology, psychiatry. It's basically the study of the mind, really, isn't it? Do you not find that you have a natural ability to see the workings of the mind in your head as well? Like as if you're going on, you know, like a maze, and that's a bit like a game as well when you go round the mind. You know, skipping along there, taking a left and a right and saying, oh, well, that's where the problem is, right? some people see the outside and some people see the inside. And just because you can't see the inside visually unless you're scanning it, and even then there's only, you know, a certain amount that you'll see, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, why would you get big G, as I call him, God? Billions of people pray to this man, believe in this man, believe it is a man. You've also got goddesses as well, gods and goddesses, depending which culture and, you know, which sort of like, you know, year we're talking about. But already you're believing in something, an entity, you know, some body, whatever, that nobody can see. So what's the difference? What's the difference?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a bit hypocritical, really, isn't it? You know, and even in the Bible, if you're, and I'm saying this because it is Good Friday today, I'm going to honor that. You know, we're doing this on Good Friday. We are Easter weekend. You know, there's the resurrection. You know, there's the cross and then the resurrection. And gone. The spirit rose. You know, their body was nowhere to be found, but they probably put it somewhere safe. Right? The spirit rose, but that boulder was pulled back, wasn't it? Either that or they forgot what cave they put him in. But that aside, you know, again, there's God's son, Jesus. Yeah, we don't see an awful lot of the guy, if at all. We pray to him, we sing to him, you know, we, you know, say things in our head like, oh, thank Christ or thank Jesus for, you know, all the time without realizing. So yes, when it comes to spirit, you know, and when it says in the Bible, there'll be others like us, like me, meaning Jesus, don't vilify them like you vilified me, right? And no, I'm not a religious nut, by the way, but I just have a very good sense of understanding about the physical side and your spiritual side. Your spirit keeps the whole show going. Without that, without balance with that, without, you know, honoring the intuition, you know, your physical self, your spiritual self. It's not called mind, spirit, body for no reason, right? It's alignment of everything, right? Then you have a duty to yourself to honor your spirit, not necessarily by going to organized religion and stuff, but to honor thy spirit by nourishing your spirit, and you do that through your intuition. Yeah. Educating it, allowing them to expand, learning to listen to that inner voice. Yep. Because actually they know more about things. They know more about shit than we do, generally. Oh, would you agree?
Yes, yeah. Well, one thing that I want, you've mentioned about organizations and being part of whether it's a church or other. So like something that I would like you perhaps to talk about is, because I know you mentor so many mediums. What do you feel is missing or most needed in the way mediumship is taught today?
Responsibility and humility and honoring the process, right? You know, I think perhaps it could be the quick fix society, you know, the instant gratification society, that's perhaps bought into that side of it. You know, you can't just get up and go, oh, by the way, I'm a medium, right? You know, oh, I'm a medium. Well, when I realized I'd connected as a medium, because not all psychics are mediums, not all mediums are psychics, okay? If I meet 100 mediums or so-called mediums, I can guarantee you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, only one of them would be a proper medium, right? Not because you get a lot of mediums that think because they're clairvoyant and what have you, you know, that's them being a medium, and it's not. It's entirely different. It's a different energy that you're using. I think that they don't realize that it is a responsibility, that you're not bigger than the message, okay? You're not bigger than the message. That you can only, you know, you work on yourself, do your absolute best, always strive to get the best connection possible, and to work it on yourself, that part, to profile and all the rest of it, so that you've got enough in the way of information in your intuitive filing cabinets for being able to get across their communication, right? And honor that and hopefully do them justice, like that. And so find yourself a good mentor, advisor, a good medium that knows about that process. There are commandments to follow as well, by the way, where they're a bit like you get in the Bible as well, but ours are more spiritual based. And understand that it's not an either or, that being a proper medium doesn't mean you don't believe in God. I mean, the two do come hand in hand. It doesn't mean there's something weird about you either. Right? It doesn't. But unfortunately, in this day and age, sometimes, having a way out image, attracts people, to view your content and stuff more. What would you say makes for a good medium?
Definitely being humble. So humility, being of service to others, realizing that it's not about us as mediums, but it's about doing justice to the spirit world. Kindness, compassion, being able to still empathize with the client, helping them with their grieving process at the same time as while establishing and maintaining the link with the spirit world. So it's like helping both clients, and then, but I truly believe that the people in the spirit world are our clients as well. They choose us. So definitely, well, those things. And also, I feel a good medium is a person who knows how to remove her ego aside, knows how to become a clear vessel in order to be of service, which means as human beings we are inundated by our emotions, our thoughts, but if we can master how to put it aside when we start our reading, it makes such a difference. And then, of course, the ability to ground ourselves, protect our energy, and work with our spirit team who are able to raise our vibration. So an ability to raise vibration and having fun, I think it's also important. We should not skip it as mediums. So I think those mediums who have fun in general in life and experience so much joy are going to be so more evidential and better mediums, because they're going to connect and receive clearer messages and support their clients.
Very good. You've been taught well.
Yeah. Do you think so?
I know.
Well, one thing.
You've also put the work in, so that's good.
Lara, one thing that, because I truly, well, there are many things I admire about you. When you do readings, your messages are very layered and detailed. And I know you help your students to go deeper, to move from giving a surface level message to bringing through something truly meaningful and evidential. How do you guide them in that process? What advice would you give to developing mediums, how they can go deeper?
Raising your vibration, right? I've never been I did try it, to do the meditation bit before you connect with, because that's what the books would tell you, and I'd gone to a couple of groups where they sit and do a meditation, and then, you've got to, it's quite a leap though. And I'm naturally, happy, buoyant, positive person and stuff. So I thought, God, I feel like running through quicksand. It feels like I'm like really heavy. I thought, how am I going to be able to, because you have to, I call it jumping, where you jump to get to that next level. You've got to have the ability to springboard from that layer into the next layer, into the next layer, and keep aiming up the way to achieve, like going up steps, right? We've got, and I really do think it does make the difference of the type of information I can get, is because my curiosity comes out at that point as well, when I'm going up. So say, for example, and I'm talking hypothetically here, I'm connecting with somebody's mother. She had a particular type of handbag, right? Now, this woman could be there with her hair done a certain way, wearing her favourite colour flower. I'm just talking hypothetically. She's got a handbag. So we look for what we call the golden nugget. Okay, it's not actually a golden nugget, but it's what we say to ourselves where we're looking for that shiny object, which is the one thing, right, where the client, you know, like the daughter that's there, and you're connecting with her mother. And it's beyond the validation, because you've already done that. I've got your mother here. She was, you know, this old, she, you know, she was poorly. This is the condition that she had. This is how she felt, and other stuff, right? So it's within there, but deeper is the contents of her handbag, right? And something in there that's very personal that only the daughter would know about, right? It's very powerful, right? Because really, when you're giving the message as a medium, you're also healing them. And that can only happen, the healing can only happen in that shifting process, which is minute, right? The shift is minute, there's a small gap to do it in, right? And so I'll maybe, I don't know, hypothetically, let's pick something of a little photograph of the uncle or the mother's brother that died, you know, in infancy, and she carries his picture around, black and white, with a silver photo frame. And, you know, and so that shift the client, you know, the daughter, it's quite a jolt, because it's like, my God, how did she know that? Well, so your mum showed me it. Even better still, you ask the mother if there's anything the daughter has in her handbag that's actually relevant to her, that she knows about. So then you're going into that other part of connecting the energy and communication. Because the spirit, they can go, she can stick her head in that bag, because she's not held back by, you know, like a physical body. Yeah, well, by the way, she's got one sock in her bag. Your mother says you've got like, what, a stripy sock in your bag, and she doesn't know, she's laughing because she doesn't know why just the one sock. Well, she might take it and wipe it with her windscreen in her car. You know, you just don't know if it gets all condensation. So you see something like that, it's the pushing, being curious. What if? Ask them. And that comes from, right, also a very profound thing, and one that where it does make it easier to connect initially is any client that you've got, ask them to tell their loved ones that they've got an, you know, appointment with you, or they're coming to see you Saturday at 3:00, because you wouldn't say it was a boyfriend, right, in spirit, not in spirit, in physical. You wouldn't just turn up at the pictures and not tell him, but then expect him to be there and get angry because he's not there. It's the same with spirit. We treat them with the same courtesy. The 3 days before you have a reading, put those thoughts out, write post-it notes if you have to, and stick it to the fridge. Don't take any chances, because they're not there all the time, right? But hopefully with all the talking with them and thinking with them, it will draw them in, because they will feel that. How do you know that you're a medium? Spirit tell you. And why is that? Because your light shines brighter, because your vibration's higher. So it attracts them in. They see it and it attracts them in. Often that's who knows that you're a medium before you do.
I love it. And this is what happened with me. I shared that story many times, but so many of you who are watching it, you are perhaps new to like my story and what I do. But it was actually during Lara's lives on Facebook that I actually heard that I'm a psychic medium. And then I laughed back then because I found it really, really funny. And then I set that intention. Yeah. And then I set an intention, and then I asked my spirit guides, okay, if it is the case, bring me the right teachers. And they did. So it's.
And look at you now. Look at you now, right? I don't say that to just anybody or everybody. I only say, because it's usually spirit that tell me, you know, or somebody in spirit's told me. And if they say it, then they mean it, right? So, you know, I'm saying that. Listen, I've had to say that to some of the most, like, you would never have thought in a million years that they were. There was one guy, used to work at the petrol station. His name is Billy. I know his wife wouldn't, she wouldn't mind me mentioning him. He died last year, unfortunately, or was it the year before? He actually, a dead ringer for Freddie Mercury, this guy from Queen. Dead ringer. Nicer bloke you would never meet. And it just, when he opened his voice, I just got this, I thought, oh, he's a medium. He was also the best one that ever gave me the best. He was the one that gave me the best message of specific evidence. He also was one of the first I've trained, right? So I trained him, Billy. He became a very good platform medium. And he's gone now to the spirit world. But he was one of the best. But he worked at a petrol pump. Right, back in the day where the guys filled the you didn't self-service and thingy, and also his wife worked there too. They worked different shifts. She's retired now, but honestly, it's not the most obvious of people, right? You mean you yourself, Marta, were going through certain things in your life. It wouldn't have been the first port of call probably, and then somebody comes along and says, "Oh, you're a medium," right? And you're there. Probably you then go, no bloody wonder I've got all this shit going on around about, because it's like a diamond, you're carbon, and you are then shaped by spirit. And polished and glossed, and it's not pretty. It's not always pretty, but you've got to experience in a very, very quick way. When I say quick, it's over years, by the way, not millennia. A bit like Neo with the Matrix, when they upload a program to him and it's really, really fast, isn't it? Yep. And suddenly he knows Kung Fu or whatever. Right. Well, it's a bit slower, but we have to experience it quickly so that we've got that experience, memory, snapshot in our mind, in our energy, so that when we feel it and hear it from spirit, we know what they're talking about. Because that process is still the same. If as somebody once said to me, if they're French, do you hear it in French? Do you speak it in French? I says, oddly enough, I'm actually very good normally at hearing French and knowing what it means in English. I was actually quite good. I said, but I hear it in French. I hear that they are French, but my intuition, because I've developed it, will transfer it. Like if I was in France, I would be able to understand what they were saying, even though I couldn't speak it very well. Right. It's because of my, intuition, and I trust it to transform it, transform the language into what I understand. Right. And it's the same process when you hear somebody in spirit, that energy, it sounds different, it sounds like them, but I got to transform that as any medium and translate that in the communication that we can vocalize and communicate to their loved ones in 3 seconds.
Lara, I have a question because, I know, hopefully you'll share it I know you will, with the audience here. Is it easier or more difficult to do gallery readings as opposed to one-on-one mediumship readings? If you could maybe talk a little bit that, and how differently you have to prepare yourself when you do like small group readings at people's homes and then the platform readings. I'm curious.
I think on a one-to-one, there's always more pressure, right? Because you have to get it right. There's just the energy, you're having to use your energy, their energy, and the spirit's energy. So there's a triangle of energy that happens once it's all connected. And I've had many a client who's felt it straight. They feel that energy of that person in spirit. They feel them in the room, next to them, touching them, nothing dodgy, by the way, that sort of thing. In an audience, right, their collective energy together there can be easier to help the connection. Plus, it's more open for error because you've got people there. It's down to belief systems as well, and they've got people next to them, often that's come with them. who can remember the messages, information, and you get them nudging and going, oh, remember, they did that, or they did that. Because there is a thing called psychic amnesia, I call it, where when you're having a message, suddenly your brain, the client's brain just goes into shutdown and they can't remember them doing that or saying that or whatever. Gallery type, that's a different type of energy, and I feel that it can be very powerful. I have also stood in front of hostile like audiences as well, because it depends where you are. It depends what they've all, I mean, if you've got a theatre full of people that have been through some really real shit, like say a plane's come down their town and it's affected a lot of family, or a boat has gone down and there was several generations on the same boat and stuff like that, then yeah, it can be very powerful, upsetting, and to be able to step aside all the upset to deliver the information you've got to can be sometimes challenging, so you sort out which one goes where. And you have to find that you've got to be more trying to keep the vibe up as well, because sometimes they get really upset and that affects everybody, like throwing a stone in the pond, I've done parties of people, I've done groups of people, small groups of people, I've done like virtual stuff when that's different again. That is different again. Do you have a favorite?
I enjoy them all. It's just different vibration and different messages that, of course, during the platform readings that I do, I'm not going to be able to go in depth, and I will keep certain informations maybe for a one-on-one. I'm excited. It just brings me so much joy and it fills my heart. So I still like the one-on-one because those readings are so much more intimate, but then the energy when I do the group readings is beautiful as well. And then I've started doing online group readings, which is also beautiful because I have so many clients from different parts of the world, and it's amazing that we can use that technology and we can still connect with the spirit world. So I love it all, and it keeps my life like in balance, and then I'm not bored. Not that I would ever be, because I truly consider it to be my purpose. Yeah. What about Lara? Lara, one question, because I know viewers would be interested in that. Could you talk about the difference between being a direct medium and indirect, especially when you do those gallery readings? Because I know we've had that conversation many times before. Why not to bring it here?
An indirect medium, I'll start with, I'm a direct medium, so I tend to go to the exact person that I'm being told by spirit to go to, regardless. And that's a direct medium. I always thought it was because I was Scottish, and we're a bit more direct generally, up here. But it turns out that it's not. Again, you'll have 100 mediums, assuming that they're all verified mediums and stuff, you'll get one that's a direct medium. I discovered this when I was doing a course at Stansted about 20 years ago. And all these top level mediums had flown in all around the world, right? Like you're talking big names here. And of course, I was, a bit shy about getting up. I'd actually signed up for the physical mediumship course, but the woman had gone off sick and they'd put somebody in I wasn't quite sure about. So I transferred to the other one, but it is what it is. And anyway, I kept hiding when everybody had to have a turn on platform and stuff. And every single one of them were indirect. And then I went on at the end and I was direct, and I went direct to the person who turned out had a twin in the room, and they sat in completely different places. They were non-identical, by the way, you couldn't tell. But basically it was very powerful, right? There wasn't a dry eye. Once I was in that and I was delivering the message and stuff, you lose, because you're in your intuition and you're in that energy. You've done properly. You don't see anything visually with your eyes in the room. It's, because you're working on a completely different level. So it's kind of, you're working blind effectively. And that's because I could see them all. But there's many a time I'm there and it's a theatre and, they switch the lights out and it's pitch black. You can't see a damn thing out there. So when you get somebody's dad coming in going, I want to speak to my daughter, second row from the back, third from the right with a pink top on, and you're looking there and you're thinking, what, can you help me out, mate? I'm thinking, it's pitch black. I don't even have a clue who's up there. But then the spotlight comes on, right? You know, because you usually have somebody doing the lights. Spotlight comes on, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, bloody hell, there's a woman up there, second row from the back, third from the right with a pink top on, and it is her dad. Now that, even to me, I'm like, oh God, you know what? You don't doubt them. If you listen to them, do exactly what they say. And tell you what, they've always given me way more accurate information than people have here. If I'm doubt, I ask Spirit anyway. They tell me. So they're usually very, unless you get a bit of a one that's got a sense of humour, or they just categorically like to lie, or a compulsive liar or whatever, you know, you do get them. Indirectly, sometimes I've worked that a couple of ways, you know, done that a couple of times, you know, literally only a couple, but indirect usually means they'll go, I've got a Margaret here. Can anybody take a Margaret? And you'll get like 20 hands put up. And then it's a process of elimination. So direct is direct. Indirect is they start off here and work their way in until it's narrowed down to like one of the people that can take all the information. So the information is given bit by bit, right? Whereas it's in reverse when you're a direct medium. Which one would you say you were?
Oh, I'm definitely a direct medium, and that's why well, I'm a rebellious soul, you know, as well, free spirit. And I trained in various spiritualist churches, and I was not allowed to go directly. I had to bring the person in the spirit world with all the evidence. And as you're saying, people had to raise their hands, and then I would have to give more evidence. And then, so I wasn't able to go, like, I knew from the beginning I am with that person, but because of the structures and the expectations imposed on me, then I wasn't able to do it. And that's why I do know things the way it works for me, and it's so freeing. And I think that's what I would like to say to any practicing medium, like, trust yourself, and if you are really guided to do it in a direct way, maybe it's time to do things your way as opposed to other human beings telling you that you should do things.
It cuts out a lot of shit. It's powerful. It cuts out a lot of shit, a lot of time wasting. You can do more messages like that as well when you're doing, you know, an audience type thing. Yeah. And the indirect, there was another way that people tried to bring in a few years back. I remember being really shocked the first time I saw it. And this guy got up and he said to some, he says, I'm vibing towards you. He says, who would you like to connect with? I'm there going, did he just say that? And I thought, I better not say anything. And they went, pardon, and where would you want to connect with? And that's what it's, and they went, oh, my mother. Right, okay, well, I've got your mother round about you. But and then they started, and I'm there totally confused, you know, at this point, thinking, maybe it was a one-off, maybe he's having a bit of an off day. But no, he did that with them all. And then some of his students got up and they did the same thing. Well, it didn't sit right with me. I never went back. It just it didn't feel right, didn't sit right. I'm not saying it's like this is right and that's wrong, but that felt a bit connish, if you know what I mean. Like it wasn't right. And we all, of course, we all want to go hoping that, you know, this loved one comes through or that one comes through or whatever. But usually, I mean, that's to do with them. You're not big enough. You're not bigger than the message. You're not the person that goes, come in number 52, your daughter wants to speak to you, you know. Like calling in a boat from the ocean. It just doesn't happen like that.
Okay.
But yes, direct mediumship, yeah, maybe it is a rebellious way. I don't know. I think it's just a way that it's better to be direct, to be clear, to show humility, humor at times when appropriate, sensitivity, empathy, understanding, but professional.
I love it. Thank you. And I have two last questions. Well, two. Well, I'm sure there'll be more in my mind, but like, let's stick to two. How do you ground yourself and stay centered when holding space for others? And do you have a ritual or daily practice that helps you stay energetically clear and connected? Because I know you've briefly mentioned that meditation maybe wasn't your thing, and I would like so many people who are watching it to realize that they can come up with their own unique ways of how they can raise their vibration and how they can prepare themselves before they start working with the spirit world. And yes, I'm curious about your ways.
Well, and I meant to say before, to do the high vibe thing is I put music on, give it a vacuum, get the vibration up, earphones in now and stuff. And you often see me dancing with that run up and down the stairs a couple of times, that sort of thing to get my vibe high. Watch some comedy clips is another one. But there's times where I just think, oh my God, I'm surrounded by crazy people, right, who are I feel like they're trying to latch onto my energy, and I just feel unbalanced, or even, and I take responsibility here, I've maybe overdone it, or I've peopled too much, like gone into a supermarket and my energy hasn't really been, okay with that. There's been many times I've said to like certain people, when they've asked me something and I've given them an answer that's probably much further down the line, right? And I'm not in the room, so to speak. And I have to say, I'm sorry, I've been working. That's what, so my I take away, it's all the reality, it's just like pulled back, which is what to do, is detach from any physical reality that you see. So I really go into my space, right? I take a deep breath in through your nose, bring my arms round, and bring it in and center myself. So I scoop it round, bring it back, okay? And just in my mind, visualize complete balance and alignment. And so I'm taking my power back. I'm taking it back to taking it back from people's situations, other lives, other universes, that sort of thing. And in my mind, I say I'm calling it all back, because usually it happens because I've given parts of myself away inadvertently at times, right? Energetically, that sort of thing. Do you know, I used to show up, fully admit this, late to pick my children up at the school gate, just because I didn't want to stand round about the other mothers and fathers and stuff and get their energy.
I can relate to that.
That sound familiar? I know.
Yeah.
You got to decide that day whether you're up for peopling or not. And as you know, when you're a busy mum, grandmother, as I am now, it's not always easy, to do that. So we have to have these quick 2-minute coping and aligning of things. What was the other question that you asked me as well? So that was how I center myself.
Well, any daily rituals that that you have that will maybe encourage other. Well, basically, I wanted you to share with people various ways that people what can people do before they start working with the spirit, and that it doesn't always have to be meditation, because I know you've mentioned that you also done. So anything that comes to your mind in terms of something that strengthens our ability to connect with the spirit world, but also something that grounds us, centers. So daily practices, rituals that keep our energy clear and makes us connected more to the spirit world.
You'll see me often go out, for a quick sprint, like a walk around the field, which is not far away from me, right? To get some fresh air in and just to remove any other stresses and strains. Again, earpods. I quite often like to drive. I know that may sound a bit thingy, but I like to put an audible book on, right? And just people, if they were traveling to churches with me, I'd always go, right, before, like 20 minutes before I was meant to be anywhere. So part of me automatically tries to tune me in, right? To tune in and phase everything back the way. And actually, I can take chaos and use that, right, like stepping stones for vibration as well. Chaos is sometimes necessary to raise vibration. Yeah, to raise your vibration and get into that different place, right? That you need, you know, when you're a medium and stuff. Like I've been to churches. There's one church actually. I remember it was near the morgue up in Glasgow, and it's just really hard to get to. And the sat nav didn't like it either. I ended up taking it off and going by my instinct. But it kept going round one-way systems and stuff. By the time I got there, I must have been about half an hour late, right? You know, with the divine service. And so the divine service do, you know, prayers, philosophy, healings and stuff like that. So by the time I arrived at the door, right, I was trying to get in the door. People were trying to push the door back, it had been cut off, right, as in that, you know, you're not allowed in anymore. It was absolutely packed because I was going there, apparently. And eventually they said, you can't come in. I said, I have to come in. I'm the medium. Oh, they said, Lara, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was you. Let me in. They said, do you want to go in this room? You know, because they provide a room next to you know, the stage that you worked on. That's another thing. I always prefer to work on the ground. If I ever had a stage, I would go on the ground, right? I would come off the stage. But in this cupboard was a skeleton, you know, like one you'd get in the science labs and stuff. And it was a tiny cupboard, and it was just like looking at you like this. I've been in there before, and I thought, why have they put me in the cupboard? Right? They said, you can go in there, meditate, get, you know, that sort of thing. I don't need to. I don't need to. So I then walked straight in, straight up onto the stage, turn around, bang, like that. And I just, as a direct, I took all that energy and frustration and then used it. As a direct medium, it worked brilliantly in with that. So never ever feel that chaos isn't constructive, right? Chaos can be constructive. It's a human thing, a physical thing, probably an ego thing, and probably goes against a lot of the dogma, like before, of you got to meditate, channel, you got to do this, you got to do that, you've got to open the chakras, close your chakras, bring in protection, ask for the angels to protect you, ask for the angels to protect you, you know, all of this stuff. In actual fact, the magic happens when you have trust in, you know, whatever situation is there. That situation's there because you can deal with that, because it's going to be okay, and because that protection's naturally there. You don't need to do all the rigmarole to call it in. Right? And you can take chaos. It's not all about centering yourself. I do center myself. Sometimes I've got no option because there's chaos there, right? And, you know, I'll work in and around and take myself away from that, but use it at the same time. Another good thing is talking. You'll notice when I'm talking about stuff and going into it, I start talking faster. So if you're transitioning from everyday life, children, cooking dinner, that sort of thing, and then you're with a client, start to talk faster, because talking generates energy, right? And a vibration, and raise your energy and vibration that way as well. That's usually a sign that your inner you is trying to connect.
I love it. Thank you so much. And finally, what message do you feel Spirit wants to share with everyone watching today, especially those who may be doubting their path or their abilities?
I would give it a go anyway, right? Again, if you have to read up on it, 2 books maximum, all right? If you've got that kind of voice, or you feel a pull, you know, when we're talking about these things, because it's not just about that, you know, embracing your purpose and, you know, the passion for that, at serving others, helping others, and making a difference to the world. Like, even if it's just one person at a time. Somebody once said to me, how do I heal my broken heart? Sorry, my mum's back. The dog's just barking.
Oh, we are finishing. Yes.
I said, you heal by healing others. There's a reciprocal energy you get back when you do that with others, right? And so you get a boost. You know, I haven't had a cold. I didn't have a cold at one time for 26 years. I wasn't ill at all. And I credit that a lot to do with working in this energy. So if you feel called, if you feel that even if you want to have a chat about it, drop me a message. We can schedule a call, and not just that, but it's sometimes worth finding out about something than to sit there and years later go, I wish I'd done something. It improves your life no end. I mean, Marta, since you've been, embracing your psychic medium side and that, has life improved for you?
It has, yes. I
Yeah.
think it's all interconnected. Everything has
It is.
improved.
Yes, because you're being you. You're not flying in two engines, you're flying in four now, right? Yes, you've had to adapt, make changes, but they were good ones, right? And in using that energy, it improves your life overall, your health, your mental well-being, right? You feel that you've got a purpose as well. You feel that you have find your place in this world, your relationships, your finances. It's an all over thing. That transformation happens. So if you say, well, who am I to do something like that? Because that's often a question in the head, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll hide behind that. Who are you not?
Mm-hmm.
What right do you have to say, oh, I'm not going to do anything with that, when there's people out there that need you, that need what you can do, your special type of gift. We've all got them. It's just more well developed in some than others. And if you've got that in you, we'll develop it. We'll bring it out.
Beautiful. Lara, could you share where people can find you online?
Well, you can message me on Instagram at Lara Wells TV, or on Facebook, which is Lara Wells Live. But I'm working on a new website, so you can, if you look in there, my website should be up and running very, very shortly. And yeah, but both those social media platforms, you'll get me anyway.
And I'm going to tag you accordingly. Thank you so much, Lara, for sharing your time, your wisdom, but also your beautiful energy. And I know that this conversation will touch the hearts of so many people. And I know it will remind them that however spirit flows through them, it is sacred, it is real, and it is enough.
You are enough.
And
you're
you
watching
are
this
enough.
right now. You are enough.
Thank you, everyone. And again, thank you, Lara. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.